everybody, and welcome to Art Salon. I'm Ellie Shore, and this is the place for hearing about and from some of the most influential artists in South Florida, and has been going on for more than 6 years now. I'm the person who keeps track of the dates, and I can't believe that it's been that long. Our guest tonight is T.D. Gillispie, and she is someone that I've met in my travels through all of the art exhibits of South Florida. She's a painter. She uses all kinds of other mediums. She experiments with all kinds of things, and uses a great many found objects and nostalgic things that she tracks down online and that I think she finds in thrift stores and flea markets and I'm not sure where. Roadside. and turns them into room-sized environments that are wonderful installations, each one completely different from any of the others, that take you into a kind of a feeling space that is evocative of all kinds of personal memories and has words and sometimes sounds, I think, and things that bring forth memories from your own lives in the most wonderful ways. And it's my absolute pleasure to invite her here to speak to you and introduce you to her ideas. T.D. Gillispie.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for inviting me. I don't think I could top that, actually. She made me sound really good. So anyway, if you will indulge me, I would love to read a short passage from Alice in Wonderland, Chapter 2, The Pool of Tears. "Curiouser and curiouser," cried Alice. She was so much surprised that for the moment she quite forgot how to speak good English. "Now I'm opening out like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet." For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. They were getting so far off. Now Alice was stuck in a miniature house. She had grown to 9 feet tall, and she wanted out into a garden. And so she then cried a pool of tears. Alice felt so desperate that she was ready to ask help of anyone. So when Rabbit came near her, she began in a low, timid voice, "If you please, sir." The rabbit started violently, dropped the white kid glove and the fan, and scurried away into the darkness as hard as he could go. Alice took up the fan and the gloves, and as the hall was very hot, she kept fanning herself all the time. She went on talking. Dear, how queer everything is today. And yesterday things went on just as usual. I wonder if I've been changed in the night. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? I almost think I can remember feeling a little different. But if I'm not the same, the next question is, who in the world am I? Ah, that's the great puzzle. So Alice realizes that she's not only trying to figure out Wonderland, a place that's constantly changing and a lot of nonsense, but she's also trying to find her own identity. In reading and studying Alice in Wonderland, I see some similarities in my own work and thinking, themes such as loss of childhood, death, dreams, loneliness, nonsense, and home. Art can be a journey of self-discovery, a pathway to help find answers to questions that won't let up. So as I travel this road, live out this story, I ask myself, who am I anyway? Ah, that's the great puzzle. So my story began in a rural town in Ohio. While I was living there, I remember always feeling like I was waiting on something. Not a lot happened. The economy was terrible, and the gray winters were very long. At age 9, my family moved to Florida. Growing up, I spent countless hours at the Lake Worth Library, and as you see at the top, there's our lovely cultural council, where I went to see movies. So I also spent a lot of time at Lake Worth Beach, and I have the skin to prove it because no SPF used at all, and went to Lake Worth High School. When we moved to Florida, it was a strange, sunny, and warm wonderland that offered a broader scope for the imagination. And here I discovered that dolphins jumped through hoops. There was alligator wrestling at the local orange groves. Flamingos, at least down at, I think, Hialeah. We had kitschy roadside attractions. Mermaids, need I say more about this wonderland, fantastic architecture, and the wonderful world of Disney. I feel that this transition sparked creativity and an insatiable quest for curiosity throughout my life. For example, I'm curious about finding out that some things are not as they appear to be. This is a shell that I got. It's pretty large. It's like this big. I got it actually at a yard sale in Tennessee and brought it home. It sat on the coffee table for over a year. I was enjoying the shape of it, the color. The inside's like a faint peach color. And then one day I discovered that when a light hits it at a certain time in January for about 10 minutes every day, the thing just glows. And I've never been able to duplicate that because I can't find just the right spot in the house. So I'm also curious about finding beauty in unexpected places. And this is obviously peeling paint. It was a spring on our back gate, and we were standing out, my brother, my sister-in-law, and my brother is a great artist. He works mainly in collage. We were out there, and my husband and my sister-in-law are business professionals, so when they get together, they talk, I don't know, business-ese, but they start talking that, and we really tried to stay focused, Joe and I, and after a while, though, in all reality, we glaze over, we start looking around, pretty things here and there, the plants, the flowers. So after about 15 minutes of my husband and my sister-in-law talking about their business whatevers, my brother found me looking at exactly the same spot he was looking at. And I'm sure we were looking at it for an easy 10 minutes. And he waited till I lifted my eyes and met his, and he said, and that, it's that connection of knowing that even an old rusted spring, the houses in the 1920s that had been painted over and over and over and reveals what's inside, is beauty in unexpected places. I also have a curiosity about objects left behind and the stories that they tell. My daughter and I went to Target on a late night run, and we were throwing the bags in the back of the car. Needed to get home quickly to make something for dinner or whatever. And so she jumps in the car, and I grab my phone, and I'm out sitting on the ground trying to compose this photograph of this doll left, obviously, by a child. But, what a story it tells. Her hair is in disarray. She's laying on the road in a pool of oil, could be blood. But, to me, these things tell stories that you can sort of interpret in your own way and leave them exactly as they find them without sort of composing some kind of story. And I'm also curious about why a bloated alligator would be floating in a pond when he's at the top of the food chain. Now, realistically, I guess they can die of, just natural causes, but this is definitely something that my daughter photographed for me on an outing and knew that I would want this to draw, paint, whatever, put it in art. I have a curiosity about the way other people work, and some of my influences are Carol Walker. First time I saw her work was down at the Rubel Family Collection in Miami, and I wasn't at the time real familiar with her pieces, but the scale of it it was enormous. And she does those silhouettes, which I don't have a photo of the African American culture in history. And so on approach, I first see it and it looks like it's so innocent looking. But then as you get closer and you realize what the subject matter is, it's very dark. So I think that that's something that sparks curiosity in my mind. Also, Betty Saar, who I actually saw at Art Basel one year. Love the way she puts objects together and tells her story and, with the things that she finds, and usually they're vintage as well. I also love Swoon. I've been following her work for years. And I'm actually a collector. I have my first print that I wake up to every morning. And her work just inspires me, that the stories that she tells with people that she knows or meets, may not be the story that I get from it. Marlene Dumas, I'm guessing is how you say her last name. She's a South African painter. Just the blank stares, obviously, I would guess this is like a classroom photo. I like it because it's bizarre. Neo Rock. I like the way he divides space in all of his paintings, and there's great depth in certain areas. Story in the foreground, although I think he's like a political painter. Not what I get out of it at all. So take what you want from it. Paul Arrigo. And this is the one I'm obsessed with now. I've been looking at this image for about 5 years. This is Paul Fryer, a sculptor from London. I think this is called Morning Star, and it's in some kind of church or place of worship. And I'm guessing is Lucifer, is entangled in all of these telephone wires. There's on each side there's actually telephone poles, but I just think it's incredible. And another one of his works, kind of eerie, but something holy about it as well. I'm also curious about paint. I'm a painter. I love the way it smells and how it feels when you push it with a brush. I'm curious about how one color might react when it's next to another or across the canvas. And this is one of my paintings called 3 Wishes. This was taken from a film still. And I chose this because, to me, it looks innocent and inappropriate all at the same time. And I think it can be flipped depending on the way that you look at it. It could be reversed. So I like the feeling of the tension that brings. That's a painting called Crowned, and it's about my son and what I wish for him, what I think of him. So this is my 3 children and my niece. My idea in sharing these sort of behind-the-scene photos are because that's usually how I get inspiration. Something's happening, I must work it out. When I was a child and went to camp, we had shaving cream fights, so my kids didn't go to camp, and I kept them at home. I was the counselor, and I would have these fun activities for them to do. So every year we would do a shaving cream fight, which is horrible for your hair, ladies, so don't ever try it at home. So at the end of this session, I was telling them, get to the hose and get that off before you get inside. Well, they were just standing out on the porch at night, and I only have one of the pictures that I could find, but they started sculpting their hair into like horns and mohawks and bowls and all different shapes. So I decided I would then do a series called, I tried to use their facial expressions, which they look so nasty, really, and make them into a different story. Also, a technique that I was sort of working out or just kind of wanted to play around with in paint was I took charcoal after I laid on the paint very heavily, and I started working the charcoal into it, and it created lots of grays, just beautiful shades of gray into the white to give it texture and depth, and the charcoal started crumbling down and big pieces I left. So anyway, the charcoal was remaining and adds another bit of dimension to the paintings. I entitled this White Kids, which they were horrified by. You can't call it that, Mom. That's awful. So, of course, that's the title that I used. These are snapshots, which is exactly what I have chosen to call this next group of paintings. So in Ohio, back to Ohio, my brother and I looked forward every Sunday evening to Walt himself coming on for the Wonderful World of Walt Disney. He would introduce the show. You didn't know if you were going to see a cartoon, a movie, or a nature show, and we would lay on the floor, and that was like our time. We got the TV, which was, not always the case. So also with snapshots, before our newer way of taking photographs, you got 12 shots as far as I remember. And obviously I think my mom was, she had a new camera. She was trying this out. And so I chose to use the photographs just as they were, heads cut off. All of these photos I used my brother and I together. But after I loaded these up, and I did these several years ago, I didn't realize that all of them they're really a bit sad. Don't know why that came through in all of them, but it was just kind of a feeling that I got while I was painting them. So I've kind of discovered that in all of them, there's something missing. I intentionally left one of the ears off of my Mickey hat, and you see the tower way back in the distance. And I really do believe that without knowing it, these things, I was leaving them out. They're great memories, but they're long in the past. We have, I've lost my dad. My brother and my mom live away from here now, so I think that was maybe a part of the feeling that I was getting while painting these. The castle's way in the background, and it's hardly visible. I'm standing on a wall beside the trash can. Don't know why, but of course I had to glitter that. It doesn't really show up that well there, but played with texture in the paint, faded out the castle, and I always felt like he was a bigger presence than I am, and kind of hiding behind him. Once again, the Mickey he's very faded away, and I used the same technique with the charcoal moving into this series. Then I transitioned into doing some paintings about dreams, and these I sort of developed from certain dreams that I had just to see if I could do it, really. I mean, they were a little bizarre, so I thought, why not? So this was a dream that I had, and I was running from the Mickey balloon, which is just basically a vinyl or whatever you might call it, 3 circles, but that balloon transitioned into some type of wolf-like thing, and it just kind of kept circling around, and it's like on repeat, you couldn't get out of it. It's called Wolf Mickey. He is in the foreground, and then as it loops around, it transitions into wolves chasing this character. I have several vintage coloring books from, I think, the 50s. So I took this little girl character out and just, drew her out in paint. And she's definitely headed for that hole in the ground. So this is called Loser. In this dream I had, I was just running from something that was burning behind me. I knew I couldn't go back. So I had this image of Pinocchio in the studio for years and just liked the look of it and his position. So I decided to put him in the painting instead of myself and he's going down the yellow brick road. He did not make it to Oz because he doesn't have Jiminy Cricket, which is his conscience leading him in the right direction. So he can't return to the past because it's gone. The past is gone, yet he's moving forward in his own way, I guess. And this is the last of this series where I took that same imagery, the little girl from the coloring book, and just another bizarre dream, scary dream. And if you'll note the size of that mosquito on her head, we do live in Florida. So I don't know, I kind of gravitate to these toys. It kind of keeps going back to the toys. I have in my studio a large collection of, they're always vintage, broken, battered, things that kids have loved once upon a time. We bought this house, it was from the 20s, and you could hardly get in the yard. It was so overgrown, and this traveler's palm was probably there since the house was built, and I was like yanking all of this debris from it, and was startled by this little baby that was actually embedded down into it. So she's been there forever, and the one green eye looking up at me, it was just kind of took me off guard. So I decided that I would do a series that I called Playthings. This is Combat Cupie. I decided to put her on her soapbox. I don't know if many people would get that reference these days, but she's there to tell about it. She's in the combat boots, and her hand is red. Once again, I just set up little still lifes in my studio, and you sort of make these little stories. But I'm very interested in trying to balance cute and creepy, sweet and sinister, because I noticed in painting it's almost like a little game, because if you put just a little something a brushstroke in the wrong direction, you're over the edge. So it's really a fine line, I feel. So it's kind of just like my own little game that I play. This one called White Trash, my humor in naming it so, because it just almost looks like the buggy that I have. It's just a little metal buggy. It has no wheels, so I have the blocks also in the studio. So I just put it, like a car on blocks. I put the buggy on blocks, and they are laid out there. So I chose not to finish this baby in the front because it almost looked like a police outline of a body. Duty Time. And I really chose that just because, these toys, or any toy, basically, that if it's in doll form, they were given to children as like something to play with, to comfort them at night, take it to bed with them or whatever. And man, some of them are they're odd, they're creepy. So I like that his strings were all around him, kind of holding him in. And I find that the ones that I choose to paint, they have some type of humanistic quality. I'm also curious about playing with dimension. And the thing of it is one idea flows into another. And sometimes, not necessarily that easily, but I chose to do those same doll images that I was painting. I thought, well, I'm going to try sculpting them. So these are little figures from what I call carnival. So I took that same Combat Cupie. She's, I'm guessing, like 12 inches high. That's her rear view, literally, and just made these little dolls. Then I also chose to, I remember when going to the state fair in Ohio, there were people walking around with little bamboo sticks and these Cupid dolls hanging from, and even at like 4, 5, 6 years old, I wanted it. I didn't get one, but I wanted it. And even at that age, I thought, how odd is that? Why would you hang something, that you love by its neck? So I chose to I made all of them white, by the way, white glitter. I was going to do some other colors of glitters and didn't think that really told the story that I wanted to tell. So I put them on nooses. the ones that don't stand. I'm also curious about mixing materials. So this is a few mixed media pieces that I've thrown in. This is called Beauty for Ashes. I have many of these. They are reflections from Isaiah 61:3. It's basically about inner beauty emerging. So I took the doll heads and I took white linen and singed the edges to create the butterflies, and then they can like hang on the wall, sit on a pedestal or what have you. But what I was trying to say is that we live with scars from our past, but we can reemerge as something beautiful in studying that passage. These are the war stories. I brought some of them and placed them around the room just to give you a visual. They're shadow boxes with recognizable little golden books. I thought that might, I always try to get something that somebody will identify with quickly. So everybody knows what the gold stripe down a little golden book is. So I took these, children's stories that should be sweet and innocent, and I placed on them oil on board. They're actual war imagery, like, guns and the machinery and all of that. In the little bubbles above them, they're toy vending machine bubbles, and in them I placed a soldier that they were my son's when he was little. He's throwing them out. That's a up-close shot. I think that this opens a dialogue of what we give our children to play with. Obviously, they don't play with many physical toys anymore. They play with violent video games. I struggled with this when raising my son. I didn't want him to play with those things. But, if they want it, they can get to it. They go to friends' house, and I don't think that they are at all equipped to deal with what they're emulating. So this is Big Bang. It is actually 8 feet long by about 4 feet high. So I asked my son what gun, I didn't have much knowledge about it, what gun would most people recognize, an easily recognizable piece, and he said a Desert Eagle. So I took an image of a Desert Eagle and I reproduced it on birch plywood, cut it out. It actually has depth. It's, it stands like 2 or 3 inches off of the back support. I then laid out the vintage little golden books, which I searched for. I had my mom looking for them in Tennessee, and I, just went to every Goodwill and all of that, and yard sales that I could find, because it's very important to me to use something that has a history that's, been not only for the trend and it's a good trend of, recycling. That's really not my mission, although I like that idea as well. But to me, it has to have some type of history to it. I can feel that presence. So after putting these on that support, I cut out, randomly placed the same thing that I did in these war stories, and did graphite drawings on vellum, and they're scattered around the larger piece. That's just process, forget the cooking. But yeah, canned goods make great weights to hold down on whatever you're gluing. So this is what's new in the works. I'm creating for the next Fat Village in Fort Lauderdale. Ellie's show, as a matter of fact. I'm going to show the Big Bang that you just saw, the large Desert Eagle, and this piece will be something that I'm working on, and it's called Security Blanket. So I searched and found a lot of baby onesies, and then transformed these little appliques onto each piece that will be basically the border of the security blanket. Because, the baby onesies, they frequently have some type of imagery on the front, but I thought it would be interesting to put something much more violent and real on the front than what might be cute. The flip side of the blanket, I bought through a connection military jackets, and they have patches, they've got the names on them. So I tore them apart, and I'm reworking them to be, in sort of a quilt-like fashion where you join pieces together. That will be the back of it. So this is back to the front. The onesies are going on this side. I wanted to use that Desert Eagle on the front. It's rather large. I think this is a 9-foot wide piece. So to bring in the childlike feel, when you put the camo on there, it looked very strong and harsh. So to soften it a bit, I've embroidered with little golden colors on the pattern. And that is in April. This is something that I won't say I haven't started working on, but these are new works where, once again, hunting down history. I am obsessed with, if I see older photographs, historic photographs, I feel like I'm leaving behind my family with these discarded pictures. Sometimes it's the end of the line, there's nobody else in the family, they don't want them, or there's nobody to take them. So I found all of these. There are, there's like 15, 18 boxes on Craigslist, and I begged the guy, pick me, because I wanted the whole lot. He was in Fort Lauderdale, and this particular grouping of things is one family's history, coming over, settled in New York, I think from Italy. Settled in New York, they had a photography business. In the 20s, they moved to Miami, and I'm reading their letters. They're bickering back and forth. They're love letters, birth records, lots of photographs, Valentines, so I just can't imagine how lucky I am to learn about this family. So I found on, what is it called? Google, like when you can see the street image. I've actually found the house in Miami, which I definitely one day want to go check out. Not a bit stalker-like, but I want to see it in person. And so then they migrated up as they got older to Fort Lauderdale. So the man who I bought these objects from had it stored in the attic for like the 25 years that he lived there, and he just said, I can't throw it away. Don't know what to do with it. So I said, I'm the one. I will honor them in some way. So I've been reading over the last 4 or 5 months about this family and trying to figure out, I hope it turns into something great if, I'm giving it a shot. That's the new things that I'm thinking about. I'm curious about the different way to act with people. So this moves into installation work. This is Where the Heart Is. It's an installation with open walls, with the thought that privacy is not truly ours at all, even though we try to hold on to certain things that we don't want others to know about. So, in turn, I offer the opportunity for the participants to share what they keep private within themselves, a secret on the vintage windows, or put something in the open drawers. This is an old door that I sort of chipped out the words to specific songs that I relate to about home. So I was just taken aback by some of I lost my computer, lost almost all the images of this, so I only had a few to show, but I was just astonished at some of the things that people would reveal. There were things on the windows about rape, about death and how they should have treated the individuals, specific things about coming out, from being gay. I'm kind of blank right now, but so those are the drawers where people could, if they didn't want to put it, be so transparent to put it out. I don't know who wrote what in any of this, but the goal in getting this information was to help me understand people. And then it sort of moved you into another idea for a different installation. Or me as well. But on the old dresser, I have above it a mirror for reflection. There's a light, usually that, exposes darkness or your secrets. I have a photo of my family. This is very blurry, I know. It's when I was little, and how family will share in, hopefully, will accept you like you are and listen to your secrets, as well as keys. So the reason that this is, I love that after a while people just become very relaxed in these spaces, and it's just, they're just kind of hanging out and chilling, so I just kind of wanted to capture that as well. So, like our minds, we do not always choose to allow others to enter. It's a personal space where we can lock others out. And the house is an illusion of privacy. But the drawers are open, the windows are transparent, and the walls are open. Anyone can enter. I'm curious about human nature. This is the spirit house. We all bow to something, whether we want to admit it or not. And this is not in any way intended to be a church or a place of worship. It's just that is a recognizable thing that we can relate to get you to the point of thinking. What do I bow to? It could be money, sex, some kind of deity, work, etc. So in the pews, I actually used car flake on this whole thing, which I wanted something that was extremely glittery, which I found that it read that way in the light. So the people actually sat in the pews, and there was a little flyer in the thing in front with for them to fill out so that they could ask themselves what they bow to. And then they freely shared it in this offering box. I don't know who wrote what once again, but on both of these installations, I had people grab me, and a few of them were crying and said, "Thank you." I had no idea I would receive that kind of reaction, because they just said, I got it basically off my chest. I've never told anyone. And you have to realize, I don't know what they wrote either, but it was, that was an interesting interaction with this. And this is my favorite, because once again, after a while, people loosened up. They were just sitting there on their cell phones, just kind of hanging out in the space and kicking back a beer. So I wanted to show you how things look, one space to another. All those former pictures were of an outdoor event. It was very casual feeling. People loosened up, but this felt much more serious. This was at Mocha in North Miami. By the way, I had that kneeler in the outdoor show tucked behind the panels, the altar, I guess is what it would be called, as a place of private contemplation or prayer, whatever you want to do back there. But it just didn't work in this space, so I thought it looked pretty powerful in the front. The interior of this TV, which, TVs, they definitely have consumed a lot of our hours since they've been developed. I chose to put, it's fully lined with gold glitter, which is, something that is valued. On the bottom is an offering box. That's an antique Bible from the family, and the golden calf to represent all things that we could bow to. Actually, it's the Wall Street bull. And I was completely shocked that people were coming, they were kneeling, and they were serious about it. I wouldn't do it. I mean, it's just not me, not in any way judging, but I was shocked that people would actually participate in that way. This is a treasure, because usually I'm doing all of this by myself, or I have to grab my son when he's not at work, or have my husband help me. Can you go to the unit and help me get all of this stuff out? And which they did to get it there. So I drove this down to Miami, and I was greeted by 8 people with white gloves to help. Oh, no, you stand back. It was like that was such a moment. I'm curious about human behavior. So installation is called On the Line. When you enter the installation, you are facing each apron. They each represent each of us working as an individual. But as you go through, on the reverse of each apron, there are world flags that represent a symbol of unity. The behavior of the world, the division of our own country, culminates in a flat line at the rear of the installation, because we as a world or a nation and a nation are in distress. This is a lot of, I've collected vintage aprons over the year, and I just happened upon one, also some to add to it, like 80 I just bought from a woman off Craigslist. In the pockets there are, I remember my grandmother, she was an upholsterer, she wore an apron all the time. She would tuck in her apron pocket, there were tacks, upholstery tacks. She would whip out a note of something she needed to, it was important, she needed to remember that day. So I tucked in these pockets after I had researched like what animals, or that animals, do in fact work together as a whole for the better of everyone, not only as individuals. I looked up, I don't know what they're even called really, heartbeats is what I looked up, and tried to mimic. I researched like what does a normal heartbeat look like? What is one that's in distress, and moved along. So I took that imagery and I laid out like a very thick yarn and mimicked it. So from the front of the installation, it's a great heartbeat, and as it moves back it's in a circular pattern. As it moves back, it's getting worse. The heartbeat is becoming more irregular until that at the very back, it flatlines to say that we're in some serious trouble here. So I thought that by using the iron, I could just burn the fabric. I wanted to that iron pattern to write on the line. So little did I know, you can't burn cotton any longer with our modern day irons because they have an automatic shutoff. So my daughter said, well, you can do a chemical reaction with, something I thought was going to be so simple, just burn the fabric and you're done. Chemical reaction with lemons created these, I had to do tests and see how long, how much to put on there. So that's what created that pattern on the back. I'm also curious about the way we view ourselves. So I created this installation called Peep Show. This is actually at Fat Village right now. I've mentioned that 3 times. I've never been there until this show. I didn't even know it existed, and just happened to get asked back to back to do this. So this is at Fat Village right now, and I love that because I like how people are comfortable enough to make it their own. So that's actually Rolando. Those of you who know him, he was getting some kind of shot in the center of it. So this is about the inner self as opposed to outer beauty. So the exterior is, you see the outside of the garments. And then as you walk into, that is our outer self. So as you walk through the keyhole of bras, when you're inside, you see the backside of the garment. So that would be our inner self. And on the chandelier that I created, there are little brass heart lockets, and kind of pouring out of these open lockets are reminders about, reminding yourself that you are beautiful. That's like from the Song of Solomon. Or also, 1 Peter says, your inner self should have unfading beauty. So once again, it's just saying, let's not focus so much on this, although that's important too in life, to get us anywhere and feel good about ourselves, but be more focused on what is on your interior and making that beautiful as well. It's an exercise in refocusing our thoughts in the way we view ourselves and others, as a matter of fact. It's not a very comfortable thing going into like Goodwill and all of these thrift stores and buying other people's bras and underwear, by the way. I got the weirdest look. And I had my brother, because he knew I was putting this together, I said, hey, I couldn't find that's a bullet bra, and then some of the ones that form this keyhole, I said, I can't find anything like that, and I want this old sort of sharp imagery. So he was actually helping me look. I think my niece actually found it, but I said, scout out around there. I need some like 50s bras and things like that. So they helped me find some of the corsets and through a dealer up there. And there you go. Help all the way around. So this is when I went up for a show in New York. I discovered Alice. She's out into the garden now in Central Park. I have no idea who did this. Can't remember. So this bronze. So in summing up all of this nonsense, as Alice would call it, I'm creating art as visual storytelling, learning to walk through the world, our wonderland, trying to understand the nonsense and the noise, and freeing curiosity. Curiouser and curiouser. We're all mad here. That's the story that I'm sticking to. Thank you. Thank you.